I think Nikki McLeod, our non-executive director, is due to join, but she said she would be a little bit late. Otherwise, I do believe we probably have most of the Neds here, bar Moira, who I think gave her apologies, as I say, as did a number of governors. So, first of all, are there any declarations of interest for items on the agenda? No. Okay. I should just mention that we are recording the meeting, and that's basically. Nikki has confirmed she's here. So sorry, Nikki. I thought you might be running late, but great to see that you were able to join. Yeah, so we are recording the meeting so that we can. Usual practice now is to put it on the website so people who weren't available to attend can do that. And it's available to members of the public. And of course, it helps Tracy with her minute taking as well, because there's a helpful record. I think that's right, isn't it, Tracy? We do make it available after the event. Okay, are there any governor membership updates, Tracy, that we need to share?
Yes, we've got two. So Alec McFendron has joined us today because I can see he's on the call, and he's taken over the adult service user seat that Tryon was in. So welcome to Alec. Don't know if he wants to say a quick hello before I move on to my second update.
Yeah, Alec, that would be great if you don't mind. I can't see you on my screen, unfortunately, because I can only see 9 people at a time. But if you're able to just even pop up and say hello, that would be great.
Yes, hi, good afternoon all. Yeah, my name is Alec McFedron. I specialise in leadership and management, executive coaching, and hoping to be of value somewhere along the line. So I will listen with white noise acronyms for the first session and see how I can get involved further in the future. But nice to be part of the process.
Great, thank you, Alec, and really great to have you on board. I know when we did your induction recently, we reflected on the fact that we met Alec as part of the Becoming a Governor sessions earlier in the year, and it was great that he's had the opportunity to step into that. So just as a reminder, everyone, we've got an opportunity, obviously, if you want to raise a question, then don't forget to use the hands up if you can. But also there is the chat box for people who can access the chat box. One of the things I wanted to mention is that last time I think we did run over rather significantly. So, and that was reflected in the feedback that we got from colleagues when we requested it. So I'm going to try and be a little bit tighter on time this time and try and sort of manage the timings that we've allocated, and hopefully we will therefore finish on time, because I think it is particularly important in the current climate that we don't take up more time of people than allocated, as they may have other pressures and commitments they need to adhere to.
Sorry, I had just one more update on the governor membership update as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just to let everybody know that Dr. Shahid Hussain has stepped down as a governor. He's actually leaving the organisation, so he has stepped down as well immediately, and he has got a new job, so that just needs to be noted as well.
Thank you, Tracy. Apologies, I forgot you had a second one then when we introduced Alec. Great, that's noted, and we obviously take the opportunity to thank Shahid and wish him all the best in his new opportunity that he's going to pursue. And I think, Tracy, that means that we will include this vacancy within our up and coming election process.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. Okay, I'll try and keep across the chat, but it's sometimes hard when I'm actually in the middle of sort of a particular item, but obviously we'll try and go back over anything that hasn't been picked up and try and address that in the meeting. But if we do miss anything, please don't worry, because we will. Tracy's always very diligent and goes back over all the comments to make sure we haven't missed anything, and we pick those issues up and follow those up with people. So there won't be anything lost in the chat box. Okay, so with regard to the minutes of the previous meeting, can I just ask for any points of accuracy first and foremost? And if everyone's content, can we approve the minutes? I'll take sort of any absence of any comments to mean that we're happy to support that. So, well, I'll take that as approved. And I think, Tracy, in terms of the action log, everything that was on the action log that was due for action has now been completed, hasn't it? Including the one that was listed as open, which was the link to the virtual tour of the new Brackley Health Centre. I think that was recently circulated, wasn't it? Great. Okay, so we've closed those actions, so thank you very much. Just go back to the agenda. Okay, any matters arising from the previous meeting that aren't going to be picked up on the through the course of the items on the agenda?
Okay. Janet's got her hands up, Krishna.
Janet?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman, and I must apologise. I've lost a bit of paper when I've written my notes on this, but it's the item. If I could just briefly say something about the item on page 5 of the minutes, 60M. This was a point I raised on the Trust website.
Yeah.
To do, it come from a member.
Yeah.
And I first of all, I would apologise for raising it now. Obviously, this is the sort of thing that would have come to PSG if we had still been functioning. But I don't want to take up too much time. And I thank you to the office for forwarding a helpful answer on this. I have got back to the member who raised it because there was a request for what the member would advocate. The member is very, very clear that it would be preferable to revert to the previous setup, whereby there was a red button at the top and people in crisis could go straight to the red button. Now, it's certainly true that the generic mental health number is on there, but I've looked at the website myself. You have to go from the home, you have to click to wanting help, and you have to find that, then go to that page, and then you have to read down 3 or 4 lines of print before you get to the number. Now, in normal circumstances, that was perfectly adequate. But the member's point was that someone in real crisis who is disorientated and disengaged really can't cope with reading at all. This is the member's point. And the old system, the previous system, where you just pressed a red button and it got you straight through to help. And yeah, I don't want to be melodramatic about it, but conceivably it could prevent a really serious incident.
Okay, thank you, Janet. So I think the action, I do, as I recall, Tracy, you'll have to remind me, Tracy, your colleagues, that in fact Comms did agree that they would review it, didn't they? So I think we sent an answer, Janet, to say, if I remember, that the reason why it was changed was because the red button was only on the front page, and it was felt that you know people needed to be able to identify to see exactly where they could get help on any, depending, it doesn't matter where you land in the website, you should be able to see that. But I seem to recall that Comms did commit to actually looking at that. So can somebody remind me what we committed to? Tracy, you're on mute.
Oh, sorry. I'm just looking at the action log, and so it says we moved the help button to the top list of menu options when the website was relaunched in 2017. This was to ensure the link was visible on every page and not just the home page. We made this change to ensure that regardless of the section of the website that people were visiting, the help button would still be available and they could access help if they needed it. The website is constantly in a state of revision and improvement, and some further changes are planned, which will make the iHelp option stand out even more.
Okay.
That was the response.
So, Janet, I think what we can do is commit to just feed that back and ask for that in any further revisions, for that to be looked at again. I do understand that I think even there is even in my own, because I did go and look at it myself at your prompting, I think it needs to be really clear that that is where somebody is looking for help with their mental health or some other service. So we just need to make sure that, you know, it's user friendly. So I think absolutely acknowledge the importance of that, Janet. So we will feed that back and ask comms to make sure it is part of any further review of the website. So Janet, you're on mute, but I think I got the sense of what you were saying. So is that okay if we move on?
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Janet. Okay, any other matters arising? Okay, lovely. So thank you very much. We've approved the minutes and we've noted a further point to forward to comms around that feedback, Janet. So thank you very much. We move on now to the governor-led initiatives and items. And in fact, we have our first item from Chris on update on membership engagement and representation.
Hello everyone, can you hear me okay?
We can now, Chris, yeah.
Good afternoon, and just a welcome from me. As Christian alluded to, this is a difficult time. I think people are worried, concerned, anxious about a whole range of things. Certainly the novelty of the first lockdown soon wore off. So thank you for giving up your time today. Thank you for the work that you do in whatever capacity you are here as a governor, member of staff, whether you're an ed or a member of the executive team. It's good that we can come together as we think about our work together as a council. I'm going to stick to the time as best I can, bearing in mind Christian's challenge. I'm going to speak for 10 minutes and then give 10 minutes for discussion around membership, engagement and representation. Have people got access to the slides? Are they going to be shown, or?
I can put them on the screen, Chris, if that would be helpful.
Good, please, Richard. Thank you. Okay, can people see them?
Oh, I can't at the moment. Oh, it's just coming, I think,
It
Chris.
should just be coming.
There you go.
Thank you. Now.
Richard, you're a star. Could you move on to the second slide, please? Yeah, this slide is really about our training, and there's two elements to this. One is our mandatory training, and one is about external. I raised last at the November COG that we are a little bit behind on some aspects of our mandatory training. And whilst there is support available for e-learning, Mandy Wolf, who is the volunteer coordinator, has produced a book, a little information guide, if you like, that we can fill in as a booklet to bring ourselves up to date. So for any colleagues who are struggling with accessing e-learning, please look at the booklet. Tracy's worked very hard. We are volunteers too, and we're going to be able to have access to that. So that programme of bringing ourselves up to date with our mandatory training will be launched this month. So please look out for it, and can we all please be diligent in completing this and getting this returned. The second aspect is around the external training, in promoting an investment in training for governors, externally through NHS providers. Some governors have already been on training, and we have a further course on the 18th and 19th of January next week, and again on the 1st of February. There will be a showcase of the PPI strategy that we worked on together at the NHS providers event next week, and I know John Walker is able to join us at the conference session next week. But along with other examples of good practice, the NHFT PPI strategy will be showcased.
Chris, sorry to interrupt. Apologies. A comment that you sound a little muffled in the chat box. So I was just wondering whether you might be able to enhance your. our hearing. It might be a reflection on
How's
us
that?
rather than you. That's better, I think. Thanks, Chris.
Is that better?
Sorry to interrupt.
Not at all. No, I'm grateful for the feedback. It's very difficult, isn't it, to tell when you're talking to a screen. So just to recap briefly, the external training, mainly provided by NHS providers. They have a good track record. We've been able to access their programme of events and courses. There is another programme next week. John Walker is able to join us. We'll be showcasing the PPI strategy that we co-produce with the Trust, along with other examples of good practice from other foundation trusts. And also going forward, there is an investment for governors in virtual courses during 2021-22, core skills for new governors, also training around member and public engagement, and also effective questioning and challenge. So I want you to recognise there will be some real progress on investment in training. Next slide, please, Richard. Yeah, just on the governor election campaign, this is quite an important slide, please, everyone, because we do have, as Tracy sent out after the November COG, quite a large, if you like, turnover of governors. 19 governor seats are up for election, 3 current vacancies with 16 incumbent governors. The timeline that Tracy has sent out, you'll have seen, but this is, as an exercise, an opportunity to ensure that our council is more representative of the communities we serve, including children and young people. It is an opportunity to encourage Black, Asian and minority ethnic people to stand for election, as well as people with protected characteristics under the Equality Act. One of the successes, I believe, last year was that we held a more comprehensive range of governor drop-in sessions, one of which, through Mark Major's help, we did during the day at Northamptonshire Carers. And the plan is to continue to roll out and target some of these governor drop-in sessions. And I've had a conversation with Wendy Buchanan, who was our partner governor for NREC, has agreed to host a session with them. So we will be looking to host some more of these governor drop-in sessions where governors are invited to provide case studies on their own experience as a governor and encouraging members to stand as candidates. We mustn't underestimate that standing as a governor can be quite daunting. And I believe we need to come alongside people to encourage them and to help them with this process and to talk through what it is and what is involved. But certainly in terms of the key timeframes, the nominations launch on the 4th of February and close on the 4th of March, and voting would follow thereafter for contested seats. Thank you. Next slide, please. You'll be pleased to hear you won't hear any more of my voice. I'm going to hand over to Helen, who's going to be talking about our school's engagement pilot. Helen?
Yes,
great.
Thank you. Sorry, it's the New Year stumble on the mute button, but I'm back now. So I'm really, really excited and pleased to be able to update COG on the current state of our schools engagement pilot. So for anybody who's new, who's joining us, this is a pilot that we've started to look at engagement with local schools, to spread the word of NHFT, make contact with local communities and help more effectively represent the people of our communities. So really, really amazingly positive session. We had an interactive virtual event at the beginning of December, and there were 10 attendees at that, including myself and Chris. We put together a presentation on the work of NHFT, and we were able to talk with the school governor chairs and head teachers from 4 primary schools in Northampton, Kettering and Daventry. It was a great interactive meeting. We presented lots of information about the work of the Trust, and we also asked 2 questions, and these were really to engage with the school communities and find out what we might be able to offer in the future. Of those 2 questions, we received constructive and thoughtful feedback, because the people who were attending the meeting were working in the school system. They are all very pragmatic. They know what we are all going through in dealing with the pandemic and how it's affecting people in the community. And the main message that we had from everybody at the meeting was it was great just to have someone to talk to be able to express what's happening in our schools to somebody outside of the schools and to be listened to. But the first question that we asked them was, what are some of the current wellbeing and healthcare issues which are facing your school students and school community? There were 16 responses from the group, and there were a number of themes. I won't go through it in detail, but just as a heads up, the themes were around the awareness and availability of support services, the speed of assessments and referrals for things like ADHD, and the well-being of staff, students and their families. We had a good discussion about experiences within schools, and the message that came across is that often the school is the only point of contact for parents, especially during periods of lockdown, where it may be that it's only at the school gate that the adult parent has any contact with another adult. So what schools are finding is that they are the front line for a lot of the pressures and worries that parents have. We asked, how do you think we can support you in the future? And people were really, really pragmatic. Very much as an example, head teachers were saying, we know that you can't necessarily affect waiting times. What we would like to know is, how long is the waiting time? We can then tell the parents in our schools and give them feedback and help manage their expectations. So they're not asking for anything amazing. They're asking for information, support, signposting and communication. They also
Helen, I'm really sorry, but we're already 10 minutes into Chris's time.
Ooh,
I'm sorry to interrupt.
I'll wrap it. It's
but
fine.
I think we need to just let Chris finish. It sounds like there's some fantastic feedback, and I think it'd be really helpful if we could capture that in some way and think about how we're going to feed that back. So I don't know whether you've given that some
we have
thought.
Yeah,
and maybe we can leave you to kind of take that as an action, because I think, I mean, if there's time, we can come back to some of this, but I'm conscious that there's also a question. So I'd probably like, Chris, if you could just finish your input, and then maybe we can open that up for discussion. Is that all right?
Absolutely.
Thank you. I think just as a headline from this, I would like to encourage, before I go on to my last slide, as governors, we have sometimes discussed our different definition of what representation looks like. And for me, this is a very positive example of how we've listened to the public. We've been able to get feedback where the level, if you like, of quality and responsiveness of service, the experience of schools is different depending on where they are from the service provided by an HFT. We will now feed that back to the clinical and operational leads of service to ensure that that feedback is given and provided, and then we can go back to the schools with some positive progress and outcome. So finally, if you could move on, please, Richard. Membership support. Yes, I'll be brief. Basically, I really want to promote this in the sense that an outcome from the 3 workshops we held last August about membership engagement and representation was a recognition that our offer to members has not been as strong as it could have been, that we needed to engage with our members in a more meaningful and intentional way and strengthen our offer. And the first step in that process has been to establish a programme of events, the first of which is this Monday, called Blue Monday. It's slightly fictitious, actually, but it is at a time when people are feeling anxious, worried, fed up. And this is a great opportunity for members and members of the public to hear about the range of services through the IAP team from NHFT, but also David Smart. Dr. David Smart is a local GP. He was involved in the integrated depression pathway. He chairs one of the health and wellbeing groups. and he's also the clinical director of the Mental Health Prevention and Accord Act with the GP Alliance. A lot of work and energy has gone into preparing this. I would ask you to use your contacts, your friends, your family. It's free. Encourage them to come in. A flyer has gone out together with a copy of the Winter Members Bulletin. That has gone out by post and email this week. And I would encourage you, everyone, to talk to your friends, neighbours, members of the public to bring this to their attention. It should be a really, really good event. So, Christian, I'll stop there. Sorry if we've overrun slightly, but I'm happy to take any questions. Yeah. I think there's already some that have come up. Thank you.
Absolutely fine. Thank you so much, Chris, and thank you, Helen. Again, I think we could probably spend a whole meeting talking about the school engagement projects. It's so interesting, and the outcomes from it are so exciting and new and fresh. So well done to both of you for steering that forward, and it sounds really amazing. And I'm really looking forward to hearing more about those outputs. So let's get Rosie in, because I think Rosie's been wanting to come in. Rosie, you're on mute, Rosie.
Sorry, thank you. It was just an observation, and I think it's wonderful what Helen has done, but obviously is only scratching the surface. And it's just a plea, really, to NHFT in that the post-COVID is going to, and the demand for mental health support within schools, I think is going to give us a wonderful opportunity to, as an entree into schools, and also particularly being able to use Zoom, because one of the problems, excuse me, of getting people to gather was their time commitments from all the different areas. But being able to use Zoom is terrific. So being able to gather those people, and I wondered what engagement you're having through the Wellbeing Board with the Children's Trust.
Thank you, Rosie. So I think you make a really important point. I think that the original plan, and happy to bring Helen and Chris in perhaps at the end just to comment, but I think this is intended very much as a pilot with a view to seeing what that means for engaging more widely with schools. Interestingly, it's probably worth saying, I did actually go to the Health and Wellbeing Board this morning. And actually, children and young people is one of the key streams of work for the Health and Care Partnership. And our independent chair for the Health and Care Partnership made a really valid point that we talk about children's services, but don't think about schools being a children's service. But actually, that's exactly what it is. And engagement with schools, with thinking most widely about all the services that impact on the health of young people, children and young people, is going to be really, really important for us, because it's not just about health services, it's so much more than that. But our part in it would certainly be children's mental health, but also she made a very interesting point about perinatal mental health being such a big factor in children's mental health. So really important point, and I think one in which we need to continue to engage as part of this wider work stream for children and young people.
I would hope that we're actually that we could be trying to put some bids together to actually access some money, which I know is of concern to the government. So if we could be putting together some money, a bid for money to actually show what can be done, together with this new council and our wonderful high performing NHFT, I think we're in a very good place to try and be prepared to kick that off. And I hope some of the powers that be are thinking about it.
Yeah, thanks, Rosie. Okay, I'll just bring in John, who's been waiting to come in. John?
Yes, thank you. As far as Chris is concerned, thanks very much for all the work he's done about trying to widen the appeal of the trust to the public and encourage governors to go on. But one thing does concern me. If we look at the election campaign, it's starting on the 4th of February. As things stand at the moment, we're in the height of this dreaded COVID-19 problem, For instance, one of the comments is to plan to hold a range of governor drop-in sessions. Completely out of the question, unless it's on Zoom, but not everybody's got access to Zoom. So my concern is, has any consideration been made to postponing the election?
So I think that's probably something we would need to bring Fiona in or Richard in to comment on. I don't know whether you have a view on that, either of you. I know Richard wanted to come in anyway, so Richard, do you want to pick that up?
Yeah, happy to comment, and Fiona may wish to add, Christy. So we did ask our election services provider for some advice on how to ensure that we were running a fair election in light of the lockdown arrangements. They did confirm that they are able to reach everybody. There's the member that would want to participate in a vote, and certainly experience from elsewhere is that they do not experience an adverse effect in terms of voter turnout and people's engagement in the elections process. So their advice to us was that we would be able to proceed without any adverse impact on turnout, as John's alluded to, and I know Chris was probably going to comment on this as well. Of course, we do need to take account of the fact that some of our sessions that will be run virtually won't be accessible to people that don't have an internet connection, but we could potentially mitigate that with some physical hard copy materials we could post out for those that are interested. So I think there are ways that we can mitigate some of the risks of not being able to come together. But to the direct point about have we thought about postponing the elections, we sought some advice, and the advice was that you are, as a trust, okay to continue with the virtual and the postal process.
Okay, thank you, Richard, and thank you everyone for your comments on that. I think I know Angela might want to, when she's coming to her piece, comment on the way in which we're developing the whole children and young people work stream. But I'm going to move us on, if I may, because we've got so John, if we can come back later to anything else you wanted to pick up, but in the interest of time, I do need to move on to Chris's next item. So Chris, back to you on the next item on your list.
Thank you, Krishni. And Richard, again, would you be kind enough to put up the slides? There's less slides for this, so it should be a bit more briefer.
Certainly, let me just do that now. Just bear with me a second whilst I click on hopefully the right button here. So holding to account, here we go.
Yes, thank you, Richard. Just move on to the first slide, please. In terms of our formal role of holding the non-executives to account, there have been areas where we have had an update. For example, on the 2021 forecast financial position, which Richard Wheeler provided at our Keep in Touch briefing on the 10th of December, where he informed us that due to the direct costs of COVID, I think we're in the region of 4 million, there is a risk that the trust may not meet its financial break-even forecast position. But nonetheless, we were advised that in terms of regulation and oversight, this is now being looked at as a system-wide situation for the Northamptonshire pound, if you like, I think was the example used. We do have an opportunity today to seek assurance from NEDS under agenda item 8, the update from board committees. And as I've mentioned earlier, there will be this investment in external training under the NHS Providers Govern Well, which will equip governors, particularly new governors, with core skills and about effective questioning and challenge. Thank you, Richard. And then the second slide. Yeah, just to reference, if I may, the virtual coffee morning that we had. This was a commitment the previous Deputy Lead Governor made. We held that on the 17th of December, co-hosted with Maria and myself. 14 people attended, 9 governors, 4 NEDs. We've had positive feedback from attendees. We were able to discuss, really get a chance to get to know each other, I think, at a very basic level. It was an opportunity to meet more informally. I think for me, it illustrated the level and depth of public service that we all share, whether we are governors or a NED. We did record a thank you message to all NHFT staff, and also as providing this more, if you like, informal conversations, perhaps an opportunity to chat through in future issues such as barriers and difficulties of our respective roles, preparing for the future, particularly around the move to an integrated care system. Currently a lot of discussion around the legal status for what that will look like, but also what that will mean for us as a council and also as governors. So again, I think at a very basic level, it was really good to meet informally. It's clear we have a variety of experiences, knowledge and skills that create this jigsaw. And it was really good to, I think, for new governors to put faces to names in a more informal setting. So just wanted to reference that, and I'm happy to take again any questions, observations or feedback. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. So we've got a couple of comments, hands up. So Nikki first.
Thank you. Thanks, Chris. I just wanted to say that from my perspective as a NED, that coffee morning meeting was just brilliant. You know, opportunity to meet some people that hadn't kind of got to know before, and you know, with COVID, you know, it's really limited. And I just thought it was a really, really great opportunity for people to just talk and get to know each other, which I think will pay huge dividends when, you know, we're going to be having other discussions that we've kind of got to know each other. So I just wanted to say, I really enjoyed it, and B, I thought it was really useful. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Nikki, really helpful. Fiona, and then I think Neil wanted to say something too, although I lost your hand, Neil, so I don't know if you've changed your mind, but I'll get Fiona in and then Neil.
Just a quick one really, just to say, although it didn't make it onto the slide, we also have done quite a bit of work this week and we'll be reporting on it in the private COG meeting about selecting a new external auditor. And the external audit function is a really valuable way in which the Council of Governors hold the board to account, because it is through that independent and impartial checking on our statutory reports that you can gain some assurance about the performance that we've undertaken and the achievements that we've made. So just another important part of the holding to account, and I know a lot of work has been done by a number of governors, including Gary, to make that happen. So just wanted to just have that recorded for the minutes.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Fiona. And Neil?
I'd just like to record my thanks for the coffee morning. I thought it was a really helpful session, particularly as a new governor who knows nobody and really is still navigating my way around the organisation called the NHFT. And I think we can learn from that and really move that whole informal meeting agenda forwards in the new year. So thank you very much for those who arranged it. It was a good session.
Thanks, Neil. Really helpful to hear from all perspectives really on this, how helpful it was, and I'm sure something we can repeat. I mean, you know, I think the strangest thing of all is that, you know, for example, with Neil, who as a new governor, I haven't actually physically met Neil, which is a weird thing to say, really. So I think we're all in a very strange place where new governors may not, you know, we literally, unless we happen to meet at a becoming a governor session before, I think Helen might be the same. I don't think Helen and I have physically met. And that just seems a very strange place to be in, but hopefully, fingers crossed, it won't be too long before we're in a room sharing battered prawns together, because that's the thing I look forward to when we when we get together. People who go to Kettering Conference Centre will remember those battered prawns and the chocolate brownies, which are still in my fond memory. Thank you very much, Chris. Really helpful to have that feedback from you. And I think the plans will be afoot to take that further forward and develop both of those work streams. And linked to that is some input from Helen. So colleagues will remember that Helen and Alan, I think, went to a conference and sort of gave us some feedback about things they'd gained from that. And I think Helen, there was a short paper that went around to everybody from Helen So Helen, we've just got about 5 to 10 minutes just for you to touch on what you were seeking from the council today, and any opportunity if you've got questions. So over to you, Helen.
Thank you very much. Sorry, it's me again and not Alan. Unfortunately, he's not well today, so he's not been able to join us on the meeting. Otherwise, I would have made him talk, just as a bit of a change for you. So as you all know, and I think you've all received the newsletter, Alan and I went on the NHS Providers Governor Focus Conference last November, and we came back absolutely enthused because it was so interesting to hear the keynote speakers. We were really interested in the topics they raised, and we thought that they were very relevant to NHFT governors. We wanted to find a way of bringing some of those topics for further discussion, or related topics, into our work streams in the council. I'm newer governor, obviously, so I don't know the history of it, but Alan was more experienced with subgroups. But while the subgroups aren't meeting, we still need a channel to be making progress with our discussions as a council. So this paper, in short, really is to propose that some of the key things that we found really interesting in the conference, we can add to our work streams. So under holding to account, and you've probably all seen the paper, we wanted to add in how best to ensure that the Council of Governors contributes to the broader system plans of the Trust, how governors can help boards give confidence to make decisions, and what the role of governors is in assessing performance and risk appetite of the Trust. And this was especially, we found, in response to digital transformation that was discussed during the conference. Under membership and engagement, we wanted to add how to develop new ways of working virtually as we continue through these lockdowns, and also how to increase diversity and membership engagement. And so really, unless anybody wants to raise any questions or make any changes, we would ask Council of Governors to agree to add these proposed points to our existing work streams for further discussion and development during 2021.
Thank you very much, Helen. Really helpful, I think, to sort of look at ways in which, you know, your attendance and your involvement in that virtual workshop can feed into the thoughts and developments that we're doing. And I think particularly the governor element for me around the system piece is something actually we really need your help with, because genuinely I think, you know, there's still so much to be done around system engagement with governors and members of our community. And the fact that people are in the governor role, just, you know, how do we use that? And interesting, I had a conversation with NHS providers myself on that very issue, and, you know, what are they going to do to help us sort of influence the shape of things to come in terms of utilising governors and the governor model and democratic accountability into the ICS arrangements in the future. I know that will resonate with many. Now, Fiona, I know there was a hand up from you, but I'm not sure if it's a legacy hand or whether you wanted to come in, and then I'll bring Janet in.
I do apologise. I will put some money into the charitable fund committee. Sorry, I don't know how I managed to leave that as such an old hand. Many apologies. That's
all right, don't worry. I think, you know, some of our new terminology is gone in the dictionary. Please unmute yourself. And is that a legacy hand? I mean, who'd have thought a year ago that those would be new words in our dictionary, but they are now. Janet. Janet, you're on mute. You're still on mute.
So sorry, I'll never master it.
Don't worry, it's fine. We've all done it, Janet.
That's the trouble. I'd like to thank Helen and Alan for this very helpful report, and indeed for attending the conference, which can't have been easy on the machine. In the past, it's been most enjoyable to do it in person, and I look forward to the day when governors will be able to do it in person again. But meanwhile, this is very helpful. Two points I'd like to make, if I may, very quickly. I was particularly interested in the Doncaster and Bassett Law Trust report, because I read there, I was intrigued to read that governors continued their work via their own subgroups with NEDs in attendance and providing assurance reports at full council on matters raised. Now, clearly, the Doncaster and Bassett Law Trust had taken a different view on what was essential and what was not essential where meetings were concerned, because of course we were instructed to discontinue all but essential meetings. So it just raised that. I just thought I would have loved to have been there and been able to ask the person from Doncaster and Bassett Law what the rationale was in deciding that governor subgroups should continue, and the fact they'd managed to do it. I just mentioned that as a point of interest to me, but what I really want to say is I'm very happy to endorse these proposals. But I would like to suggest that we could add a third how-to on the proposals that Helen has here. My how-to would be how to represent the views of individuals, groups and communities, because I think that's really what you were referring to just now, Madam Chairman. I think that's key to our future development, and I think the schools, the getting the views from schools is a very good example. That is the sort of thing we need to be doing all over the place. And that's why I'm respectfully proposing a little C to add to the recommendations.
Thank you, Janet. So I think if I heard you correctly, you did fade a little bit, I think, there. But just to say, I think you were saying how to ensure that governors represent individuals, communities, and I didn't catch the other bit. But is that what you were saying? I think that's right, isn't it?
Yeah. How to represent the views of individuals, groups, and communities.
Okay. Thank you, Janet. And you know, within the governor representation role, I think that's a sort of inherent element, and so it doesn't seem out of kilter with anything that we'd want to, you know, it's consistent with everything that we'd want to encourage, I think. So, are there any other comments? Chris, did you want to come in?
Yeah, just briefly, Chair, if I may, just to echo Janet's thanks to Helen and Alan for attending the course, and also to spare Helen's blushes somewhat, but to thank her for the conference report and newsletter, which, wow, really good. I like the style, the approach. It was easy to read. It's great to hear, you know, areas of good practice and learn from other foundation trusts about how they've responded to the pandemic. But as Deputy Lead Governor, just to thank both Alan and Helen for attending. It shows the value and benefit of attending these, even if they are virtual. But specifically, thank you for the newsletter and the conference report, Helen.
Thank you. Helen, before I bring you back in, well, actually, do you want to comment? Is there anything you wanted to say before we conclude?
Just really briefly, because it's nice to see a conclusion to something where we've mentioned it at the last COG and told you we were going to report, and we have done, and we're really excited about opportunities for the future. And I'm very much in agreement with Janet's suggestion to add that extra one to the other section. I'd be really pleased with that if everybody else is happy.
Okay, so can I just ask for a sort of indication of support that we can add these elements onto the work stream that we've already got, the two work streams that we've already got, which reflect the two key governor duties. So either a thumbs up if you're on screen, or something on chat, just to give a sense of everyone looking vaguely happy to support the proposal would be good. excellent. Always like to see a bit of participation. So I can see plenty of thumbs up and quite a lot of comments coming up as well. So really important. I think, you know, this is a really good model for me of how, you know, I think I would encourage all of us to work, because I think this is an example of, you know, governors actually going to a session outside of the trust and coming back with some ideas and thinking about what we might do with that to benefit everybody. And I think that's really, really helpful. So I would absolutely encourage that. And I think they fit very well into the work streams we've got in place. So thank you so much, everyone, and thanks to Alan in his absence as well for his participation in that. Brilliant. We are doing okay on time. So thank you as well for that. I'm going to move us on to the next section. But great to, I think that the approach we're taking by starting these meetings with lots of governor input, I really enjoy, and I think it sets a really good scene for what's to come, which I have to say might be a little bit more challenging. I'm not going to pretend that things aren't challenging out there, but Angela, in her usual way, will, I think, keep us positive as well. But before I bring Angela in, so we're going to do the next section. I've got a couple of things I just want to mention, then I'm going to bring Angela in to talk about what's sort of top of her agenda and bring us up to date with what's going on in the NHS more generally, and particularly obviously in relation to the pandemic. And then I'm going to bring Melanie in to talk about a particular risk, and that is workforce wellbeing, because this is something very high on the board's agenda. So I'm going to suggest that we do all three of those things over the next sort of 20 minutes or so, and then just open up for broader questions and broader discussion with Ned and Angela, so that we have a sort of a wider Q&A. So I'm going to try and do that in that order, just so we can manage the whole time that we've got for Q&A. So very briefly from me, before I hand over to Angela, within your papers you will have the chair's report that I would have produced previously for the board. I just wanted to mention that one of the outstanding things which I have to sort of note and apologise for, that I did undertake reviews with Ned's sort of what we call our mid-year reviews, but I haven't had an opportunity to report that to NomRem. So that report has not quite happened in the way that we envisaged because of pressures of work, but I am expecting to report that to a future meeting. But just to assure you, the mid-year reviews themselves with NEDS have been done. It's just the report that hasn't been concluded. And similarly with my own appraisal review, bearing in mind my appraisal itself was somewhat later than planned, we do still just need to take a review of objectives and report back on that being done. So just a couple of outstanding things that I just wanted to be for the council to note. But actually, on a wider point, one of the things we've had to do and felt it was necessary to do was to revisit the streamlining of our governance. I think it would be fair to say, I think it's now reasonable to say that the pandemic impact is greater now than in the first wave. Angela will no doubt talk about that. So whilst I think we have got more mechanisms in place, like a virtual, setup to be able to carry on with certain meetings, etc., the actual pressures on the trust have never been as great on either the people or, including our executive team, Angela and others, and obviously the staff as well, particularly the staff, and of course our patients and our community. With that in mind, we anticipating that some of the challenges coming along, we did review our governance arrangements again, just to make sure that, we're keeping we need to maintain appropriate governance over critical decision making, but we're not burdening colleagues with meetings that are just not sustainable. And with that in mind, we've put in place, certain meetings that might have been restored, if you like, have been stepped down again, and clearly some meetings were not restored from previously. So, and even our board meeting, we are going to try and run a very short, as short as possible, a board meeting in January as we can. And these are all efforts to try and minimise the impact, particularly on executive capacity where the board is concerned, but also on capacity of people having to write reports, having to produce papers. And even so at the moment, I've just written to colleagues around the region. I chair a people board for the region, as you know, but we are seriously looking at whether we need to step that down, because people just don't have the capacity to sit in meetings. So in fact, as a result of that, I did say, although Angela's obviously here because I know she thinks, regards it as very important to update the Council of Governors, I did say to a number of executive colleagues that they shouldn't attend today, because it was important that they took time to do, to deal with the critical pressures they're facing. So I really just wanted to share that with you, that a number of meetings are being stepped down. We will absolutely do what we need to do, and that's across both on the board governance and Council of Governors governance, and where we think it's a priority, we'll absolutely maintain that, and you could be assured of that. But we will also have to be pragmatic about what things can and can't continue in the current phase. So that's probably a bit of context, really, and I'll hand over to Angela at that point. Angela.
Okay, thanks Krishni, and it is really good to see everybody, and it is, as Krishni says, very challenging, so I'm really pleased that we've got an opportunity just to share that with you today, and to update you, because a couple of things that I think, notwithstanding the report you will have, I think it's really important that I start by updating you on the COVID situation, and it is fair to say it is changing every day and through the day. But I wouldn't want anybody to be under any illusion. This is a very serious situation, and we are having national, regional calls drop in every day at very urgent timescales. Jean and I were in one last night. It is relentless in terms of that expectation upon us, but obviously critical because the situation is changing. So just to give some sense to that, there is a move from the NHS level 4 to a level 5, which tells you that the NHS is at risk of being overwhelmed, and that is why it is so important that we work together as a system, not just here in NHFT. Just to remind people, in NHFT we have an ICC, so an Incident Coordinating Centre, that acts as our single point of contact. And Jean, our Chief Operating Officer, takes the lead in making sure that we have the ability to respond on a daily basis, that we have clarity about the decisions we're taking, and that we have a risk approach to it, and we can understand what's coming in and the expectations upon us. That then gives us a platform to interact with the system as well. But just to share with people, we're now moving into a phase where the NHS is expected, quite rightly, to be working as one in the NHS family and across the health and care sector. So we are looking at our capacity in beds together. We know that the beds in our hospitals are very much becoming increasingly occupied by COVID patients, and it is above the wave 1 levels. So that is clearly putting a lot of pressure on them. And we are expected, and quite rightly, leaning in to support them in terms of our capacity from our community hospitals and with our community services. That means there's a lot of pressure on those areas within the trust, and I'll come on to mental health in a moment, but those pressures are significant. But what we're doing is doing it together, and both Julie and Itai are also involved in the clinical decision making at a system level. so that we're taking decisions across the system as you'd expect. We can prioritise then people's needs together, and we're also looking at that internally as well. But it is significant. We're having a daily strategic goal meeting ourselves, which I'm chairing, and it is a relentless feature. And I cannot say enough thanks and praise for our staff. And I know Christy said it, but it's really important that I also convey it. They are amazing, tremendous. I'm in awe of them because they really are adapting and changing and responding to what is required. So as part of the operational priorities, there are clearly things that we do need to make sure that we are doing. We're under a national command and control, and I can assure you that we are doing all of those things, and they range from supporting the COVID situation, making sure that we're still providing some non-COVID services where we need to maximise access and, you know, look after our cohorts of mental health and children, young people, for example. But also the main important aspect is to signal the role that we're playing in the vaccination campaign across the county. This is the biggest intervention that we can do for a population. It is significant, it is absolutely needed, and it will be about preserving lives. So it's very important that we're leaning into that. Again, Jean is playing a very significant role in this. I'm very pleased about the work that we're doing on this, which is not only supporting our population, but also will be supporting our staff to be vaccinated as well. We are gearing up to vaccinate all our staff by mid-February. So the pressure is significant, but a lot of effort going into that, really pleased. And I think Northamptonshire is doing well in terms of that vaccination position. So a lot in terms of the pressure. As I say, we will take decisions, we will be accountable for those decisions, and I would want to give assurance here that we are taking every decision very carefully, collectively, and also understanding the risk as we go through. We will inevitably, as Krishni says, need to adapt to that because we can't carry on as if nothing is happening, and business as usual cannot happen. So in many areas of the trust, we're looking at what we can pause, what we can delay, what the risks would be. And that's the same for the executive team as it is for any team in the trust. So we are looking at that on a regular basis as well. And just to say that, just to give you an idea, you know, whether we're looking at critical care, we are expecting our acute trusts to increase capacity across critical care beds. That's happening across the country. We will have expectations on us increasing our ability to support the acutes and ourselves as well. So a lot happening. I really do value the support the governors have given us in that. It's really welcome, and really that understanding of the position is very, very powerful and valuable indeed. So I do want to say thank you for that. I know Jean is on the call, so I don't know whether, Jean, you want to say anything further on the vaccination or the responsiveness that would be helpful as well. Thanks, Jean, before I move on to other bits.
Hi, everybody. So I just reiterate really what Angela said in terms of the pressure that the services are feeling. I'm incredibly proud of all of our teams. They've really stepped up. They are going out of their comfort zone and they're supporting colleagues across the system. And I think it's a really good example of how Team NHFT and our culture is really sort of making that difference for everybody across the county. So I'm very proud of them. Mental health pressures are extreme at the moment, and we're seeing not just increase in activity, but also the acuity of the patients that our teams are caring for. So again, massive thanks to them, and colleagues regularly share that feedback to them. In terms of the vaccination programme, I've just been over this morning to the vaccination centre, which is looking fantastic. So really proud of that and all the work that's been going in there too. So we've got all of our the staffing ready to go for that to open as soon as we possibly can. So I think progress is excellent. The PCNs are doing a fantastic job to the primary care networks in Northamptonshire and delivering far more vaccinations proportionally than in other areas of the region. So I think for me, it's a true example of how the NHS is stepping up to the challenge. continuously. It feels like anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, again, I'm glad Jean mentioned the mental health. I think, and we do continue to mention mental health when we're having our system discussions, because we all know that mental health is also under as much pressure in a different way, but still a significant way. And our occupancy of our acute mental health beds or our CAMS beds is significant too. So staff are undoubtedly under pressure. They're managing extremely well, and I'm very pleased about our work with the third and voluntary sector in this particular area. It is absolutely, I think, pioneering and leading from a national perspective. We've got a lot of good work that we're building on and extending, and I'm really pleased to say that our mental health resources that we received from a national level have very much supported the voluntary sector and have helped to sustain some of those voluntary sector perspectives, which is exactly what we want to do going forward. And again, I would just want to say that we've heard, I think it's only today, that the Lord Lieutenant, who has had an initiative of unsung heroes in Northamptonshire, has selected our mental health hub as one of those worthy winners. And I think that, again, just is fantastic news to hear. It boosts us, it gives us that real sort of sense that other people are noticing what's happening, and that gives them a rose of Northamptonshire. So, you know, real credit where it's due. They are phenomenal, as many of our teams are, they all are, but to get that recognition and to get that with working with the voluntary sector in particular, I think is particularly important. So very much a real clear focus on it, as you'd expect, and it will not get better yet. So I think that's important also to convey. We've still got an expectation of the second variant increasing cases in Northamptonshire, and as you'd expect, we're looking at that all the time in terms of predictions, but we don't expect it to plateau yet. We would be hopeful it would, but it won't yet. So our focus has to be there. Just on a couple of other bits that I think were important to mention, I was really pleased people mentioned children and young people. This is really important to us, and again, we did host a joint summit with the County Council around children and young people, because we felt that that was something that we wanted to get everybody to be conscious of, or more conscious of, and the fact that children and young people will undoubtedly be affected by this pandemic, as well as in normal times, is important. So really pleased to say that we have again reinforced through the integrated care system developments that children and young people is a priority. So that's really pleasing. And Naomi, our independent chair for the partnership, has a very, very strong background with children and young people. So I think we will gain enormously from her in that way too. And just to say again that we've had good relationships with the Children's Trust to date. It is very new, so I wouldn't convey more than that. But Colin Foster, who is the chief exec, has certainly been working with both Jean and Richard. I've had exchanges with him, and I have a formal meeting with him on the 25th of January, but he has been very proactive in reaching out and recognising NHFT as a key stakeholder, which I think is really important to convey to you, because absolutely we need to make sure children and young people stay foremost in our priorities going forward. The other bit I would mention is the integrated care system, because despite the pandemic and the pressures, of course, there is still an expectation of developing as an integrated care system. And I know Chris mentioned it earlier, but that is still an expectation, and we have submitted to regional colleagues, NHSI, that intention to get Northamptonshire to be one of the recognised integrated care systems. So that's work that's ongoing. That still demands a lot of time from us all. Just to say, exec colleagues and others are all very much immersed in that system working, because system is now the expectation, not an additional dimension. And we continue with that. And again, to remind people, mental health and our iCamp programme remain, again, key priorities within that, which is fantastic news. But again, we would make sure that we need to keep the Council of Governors as informed, as Krishna said, because the evolving role of governors in that ICS is so important to recognise, and we would want to. There's a lot happening there. And in financial terms, and I know that we touched on finance a little bit earlier with Chris Davison reporting back, we are, as you know, expected to work as a system in this regard too. So whilst we're still accountable, and we remain accountable as an organisation, we do have to report and be scrutinised by NHSI together. So all of the organisations meet together now to do that. We don't have separate meetings with them. We have it as a collective. And we are expected to land a 3-year financial plan as part of that ICS submission. So inevitably in that, it's really important that we stay clear about what priorities we have for our populations, but also that we remain a clear and solid partner in that ICS. And that's something that, again, I'd expect us to see more of through this coming year. But just to say that that is something we are very actively involved in as well. And I'll probably pause there, Krishni, and happy to take any questions. Thank you.
So Angela, we'll let Melanie do her little bit on well-being as well, because I think that will be sort of probably bring that whole thing to a sort of helpful full picture, and then I will invite questions. I just wanted to very briefly say, having been at the Health and Wellbeing Board this morning on behalf of NHFT, it was nice to, Colin was there, I think it was his first, who is the Chief Executive of the Children's Trust, and Naomi, I think it was her first Health and Wellbeing Board. But I think what was really positive to hear was that despite everything, there were lots of comments from people who are quite new into Northamptonshire saying how positive they felt about the system and partnership working they were seeing, particularly obviously in response to COVID, but increasingly with the establishment of the unitary authorities and kind of how we were galvanising around that. So I thought that was encouraging from people who were coming in new to the system. And probably also worth mentioning that in the event that Angela and Jean and then I attended to yesterday, they talked about delaying the planning guidance, didn't they, Angela? So it looks like the financial plans, the normal financial planning round, the planning round that we would undertake in quarter, at this time of year is going to be delayed, and the framework around finances will roll over as it currently stands. So I don't know, Angela, do you want to comment on that at all?
Yes, I mean, I think, that is inevitably a result of the situation we're in, and it's welcome because it means that, people are focused in the right way. It doesn't stop our need to develop a 3-year financial plan around the system piece, because we still need to make sure we understand the underlying deficit together, but it's welcome nevertheless, and I think we'll get some further correspondence through this next quarter in terms of what expectations are upon us. And it's the same with things like the quality account. We're not 100% sure about what, we are continuing to look at that and to manage it, but in terms of reporting arrangements, all of these things are being examined nationally.
Yeah, thanks, Angela. So I'll just bring Melanie in at this point. Melanie, are you happy to do a few minutes just on the well-being element and the discussion that we had as a board around that? Yeah.
There is a slide if Richard wants to bring it on the screen, but I'll talk. I mean, there's been much publicity, hasn't there, both on national news, regionally, locally, about the pressure on NHS staff, about the sort of burnout, exhaustion, emotional impact that fighting this pandemic is having on the staff. And whilst much of the general publicity focuses on critical care, I think Angela, Krishni and Jean have pointed out what we really always need to remember, which is there is an equal load of work pressure on the community care teams, helping the discharge from the acutes, exacerbated by staff absence due to COVID and illness, and also the increasing seriousness of some of the mental health issues that we're dealing with. So that risk for the well-being of staff and their ability to deal with all of this challenge has been well recognised and is well discussed as well within the trust. So from an assurance perspective, the risk on the risk register around well-being of staff incorporates COVID as an additional pressure. It's discussed in depth at Q&G, and in fact, as we went into the autumn and into winter, Q&G deep dived into the wellbeing risk and wanted to escalate this, hence the discussion at the board development workshop and at the board. So this is very front of mind for the leadership within NHFT. And the response is really twofold, because everybody is individual in the way that they respond to this kind of pressure. And so you can't have a one size fits all response and support for people's well-being. So we have a link into the national initiatives that are there, the national support put in place by the Department of Health and NHS England and Improvement. We also at a local level have a wellbeing committee which is well represented and comes together and develops a range of initiatives. We had a virtual wellbeing or Leadership Matters conference which focused on wellbeing, was well attended by about 830 odd people. And also we've done a range of activities that anyone can tap into, whether that be yoga, meditation, book clubs, you know, a range of initiatives to try and support people. But the second part of the approach is very much about that individual discussion. It's about giving our teams and as individuals the opportunity to talk, to get help and support for them as an individual and within their team. Within NHFT, that has very much been supported and led by psychologists and also by the supervision and, if it happens, the appraisal system. But also, I think, through listening events such as the staff networks. And I can vouch for the two that I attend, you know, the Carers Network, for example, the support from Northamptonshire Carers, and also the support from counsellors and psychologists joining those staff network meetings, listening to staff's concerns, looking out for opportunities to support people at an individual level. I mean, the simple fact is that we cannot change the environment. As Krishni and Angela have just said, it is likely to continue to get worse for a time. It certainly isn't going to get better quickly. And what we can do really is continue to keep a very firm focus on this risk, to challenge NHFT collectively and ourselves as individuals to be vigilant and aware of an individual team, right from the chief executive down to the porter, you know, to be vigilant of people and how they are coping with the particular challenges that fighting this pandemic gives them. And I can only give you assurance that this will continue to be a very prominent discussion within the trust as we seek to support our teams who are going above and beyond to survive that pressure. I think, Krishni, that was all I was hoping to reassure people of the efforts being made.
Yeah. Thanks, Melanie. And probably worth saying, actually, one of the things that as you all will recall, we've got an NHS People Plan that was published back in the autumn, and part of that was about really bringing, you know, and probably very timely. I mean, people have always been important in the NHS, but actually never more so than now in a way, because, you know, everything is dependent on the ability and capacity of our people, because, you know, beds alone are not enough. And Nightingale Hospital, if I may say, without people to support it is not a, you know, in the end, it is not going to help us. And therefore, it's not just the buildings when we talk about hospital, it's people. And it's interesting, I think, in the national briefing yesterday, there's a reference which I thought was just a helpful way of thinking about it. The most important currency is a clinically supported bed at the moment in terms of COVID patients. And clearly there are lots of other services we provide that are really, really important. But in terms of COVID, that was a particular issue, and I thought that was an interesting reference. So the reason I mentioned the people plan is that we were all asked to identify a well-being guardian, and that's just somebody who actually just takes a lead around, as with a lot of different things, a Ned who would take a lead on well-being. So delighted to say that Melanie put herself forward as volunteer, hence you know, she was happy to give some assurance around the wellbeing risk today. But as she says, and I think Angela would say, importantly, you know, we can't take the pressure away. We can try and support people. We can do our best to minimise the impact, but we can't take the pressure away. And the pressure is relentless. And I don't think. I think it's hard for those of us who are not dealing with it day in, day out, like, you know, colleagues, some colleagues around this room, to probably feel how difficult that is. But if anyone is on social media and follow any NHS staff, I think you will pick it up on social media, how relentless it feels for people. What I'm going to suggest is that I was going to plan for a break in between public and private, but I was thinking that actually we could take perhaps just 5 minutes now to sort of stretch your legs, ponder on what you've heard, grab a cup of tea, and then we could just do some Q&A, maybe if we get back together at 2:30. So just, you know, 7 minutes or so, grab a cup of tea, and then we could do a Q&A just on any of those things you've heard. It gives you a chance as well to think about anything, reflect on what you've heard, and think about any questions you want to ask, and then we'll have about 15 minutes or so to run through any questions. So if that's all right, grab a cuppa and we'll see you at 2:30. Thanks, everyone. quite a good positive health and wellbeing board this morning.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And there is so much partnership working going on, so I'm glad it's reflected there as well.
Yeah, it's really good actually. Obviously we talked about Lucy gave a COVID update, etc.
Oh, I'm conscious, Krishni. Are we in the recording?
Yes, we are. Yeah.
Okay. Conscious.
Right, we'll just give everyone a minute and then make a start. Okay, shall we make a start then? So, any questions? So we've obviously had a bit of input from me at the beginning, Angela's feedback about where we are in terms of COVID and broader sort of pressures, and Melanie's input around the wellbeing risk and things we're trying to do to support staff. So there's still, fortunately, quite a lot of our NEDs are here, and Angela, and of course Jean, who are still here. So are there any questions that people would like to take the opportunity to ask whilst we've got colleagues around and available to respond? Angela, did you want to come in?
I just wanted to take the opportunity, I don't know if everybody's seen it, but Wendy's put in the chat about her support for our BAME network, and I just want to say thank you to Wendy for that, because our BAME network has been phenomenally strong and incredible actually throughout, but particularly in COVID, and we meet very regularly with them, and I know, Wendy, that will have made an enormous difference to them. So thank you for that. That is, very, very powerful indeed to hear about. And, we've done a lot of work around wellbeing with many of our staff networks. So anything that we can add to will be gratefully received. So thank you for that. And I think the other thing I probably should mention whilst I've got the opportunity and I didn't, is that it's just a reminder to everybody, and we should always be saying this when we can, is that the important thing of our own behaviours and actions in relation to the COVID transmission. And we know that the second variant is very contagious. It's about 70% more contagious. And we know equally that in Northamptonshire that, within our communities, transmission is happening. So again, just a reminder to everybody, whilst we've got everybody here, that, the importance of the social distancing, the making sure that people understand the washing of hands, and that PPE where it's needed is as important for any of us. So just take that opportunity. Thank you.
Thanks, Angela, and it was interesting hearing from Lucy, who I'm happily mentioning her name, but she's our Director of Public Health for people who are not aware, and of course in that role she's heavily involved in and leading on the response, and she mentioned that the real high risk of sort of household transmission and high rates of positivity of COVID amongst young people, and therefore the risk that poses. So it's all these things that we really need to be cognizant of in our approach and our response, and the role that we can play in helping share those messages out with our colleagues and reminding everybody really about the risks and how we might respond to them. Helen, would you like to come in and ask a question?
Thank you. Yes, it's just a very quick one. Thank you very much for all the updates. It's really helpful to get a picture of what's happening. I was interested to know, because we are all in it together, Is there anything that specifically would be helpful from the Governor Group for the board or for the NEDs or for the Trust as a whole? Is there anything that we can be contributing at this time?
Yes, I mean, I think, you know, importantly is conveying the messages I've just conveyed, Helen, because people will, you know, inevitably get tired and weary of the same messages, but and may act differently because they think, well, it doesn't make any difference. Conveying that message out to anybody you're coming across is extremely important. So that would be very important to convey. I think, again, on the vaccination point of view, is that, you know, to support people that if they do get a chance for that vaccination, they take it. It will be the most single thing that can prevent the ill health and, you know, preserve life. So again, encouragement around that would be really valuable. And I think the third thing I would say would be the, you know, the support you're giving us in terms of understanding the situation that we're in and recognising that this is an unprecedented period. I've never known anything like it in my 32 years. I hope it's something that doesn't get repeated, but that understanding is so important. And, you know, as you've rightly done, raise the issue of well-being, which whilst we are on, and I would give assurance about, we need to all be on it, because there'll be new ideas and things that you'll come across or hear about or talk to staff about that we want to hear about too. So those will be my immediate thoughts, Helen. There may be others, but that's what I've thought straight off.
Thank you. Thanks, Angela. Anything, Jean, anything you want to add to that, or does that cover what you want to say?
I think that covers everything. Thanks, Krishna.
Thanks, Jean. Chris.
There we go. Oh, I better plug myself in. Just bear with me. Sorry, just bear with me. Yeah, I just wanted to build on the point that Helen made about what we can do, and it's an unashamed plug for the Blue Monday event. You know, why I'm plugging it is because people are struggling. Let's not forget we are an integrated community and mental health provider. And one of the really good things we can do is connect and engage with people before they fall over into formal services. Early prevention, greater intervention, if you like, promoting well-being and how to look after yourself during a pandemic. I would even go as far as saying to my fellow governors, this is our public duty. I know that sounds a bit strong, but actually at a time of national crisis, this is our public duty. How we can help right here, right now, is support and encourage people at the Blue Monday event to give them a better idea of how they can manage their self, how they can manage their well-being, look after their family and friends. And let's be clear, there still is an issue around mental health. Part of it, the Blue Monday event, in and of itself, is challenging prejudice. It's tackling stigma and it's raising awareness that it's okay not to be okay, and that in a pandemic like this, feeling as you are is perfectly normal reaction to abnormal situations. So I would encourage you, with all your connections and networks as governors, to encourage people to attend on Monday. I've heard this morning that the flyer has now gone to everyone at Kettering Borough Council, all staff. And that's about being a good neighbour in the community. That's about saying we're here to help, and we can support the trust by helping people before they fall over into crisis and require formal intervention. So just a little bit of a challenge, if I may, there for my governors, and to support the Blue Monday event, talk to your friends, family, neighbours, anyone you know. Thank you.
And I think really, really helpful, Chris, and our IAPT service is, you know, there and ready, and I'm sure Jean will nod on that one, that it is such a significant asset that we have. We want to get people to use it, and you're quite right, the words "it's okay to not be okay" are so important. And with staff, you know, encouraging people to say, I'm not okay. You know, as the executive team, we talk about our well-being every week, okay, and we look at it because we have to share amongst ourselves where we're all at. Nobody is immune from it. Nobody's immune from that emotional roller coaster, and everybody's got a personal story that they're dealing with, which is on top of a work situation. So it's really important that we don't think this is about other people. It's about all of us and as you say, Chris, everybody that we know. But IAP service is one that I think we should be pushing, and G may want to come in on that.
Yeah, I mean, completely agree with you, Chris. Couldn't agree more. In fact,
Thank you.
The well-being of our staff, colleagues, everybody actually in the county is so important, because we need to do that early intervention to make sure that we're supporting people when they're starting to feel down, maybe. And I just want to say that the IAP service is there, but also that we're now really pushing that with colleagues in our acutes as well, because obviously when we have some direct interventions going into their critical care services to support our colleagues in there. But I would agree with you entirely on that, and please, that IAPT number for our integrated response hub is there, and would encourage people to share that.
Okay, thank you. So we've got John, and then we've got Fiona.
Yes, just a quickie about health and well-being. I think some time ago I noticed in the staff newsletter a recommendation that people should consider taking a vitamin D supplement. I would fully endorse that. My wife and I, over the last 20 years, had various physical conditions which vitamin D supplement has cleared up. We both had COVID-19 in November. It hit my wife worse than me, but after a fortnight, she was getting considerably better. By Christmas, we could do a 4 or 5 mile walk, no trouble at all. We had no side effects. And I found that vitamin D is very, excuse me, but very essential, particularly in Northern Europe in the winter. There's a lot of information on the radio, in newspapers, not a lot of long-term research into it, but I think from my experience, it's worth looking at.
Thank you, John. So I would recommend that people read the latest guidance on vitamin D on the NHS website, because it has changed, actually. It does say that there's no clear link at the moment between taking vitamin D and COVID. So I need to be clear about that, because it's not absolutely clear about that. But what it does do is recommend that everybody currently during winter months is taking vitamin D, actually, which is new, and it wasn't the case a few months ago. So I think it is worth just reading the advice on that. And it is recommended, and it may well have that impact for different people. I've been taking it, but I think the advice on people of ethnic minority background taking it all year round was actually clearly established before COVID anyway. So I've been taking it since I discovered that. But it's the sort of thing we don't always publicise when NHS guidance changes, actually, and I think that is it's an interesting fact that was debated in an article recently that I noticed. Thank you, John. Helpful to hear your experiences, absolutely. And I think, Fiona, I think you were just commenting on the fact that IAPT is featuring on Monday's event, isn't it? We're actually going to be talking about IAPT.
Popped it in the chat. It was going to be a really good session. Went through it yesterday with the team. Really looking forward to it. And obviously those colleagues are also on hand in case anybody does need any support during the call, or feels actually they want to turn to somebody for some further advice and so on. So all really good, really positive. Really looking forward to it.
Thanks, Fiona. And I certainly promoted it again at the Health and Wellbeing Board this morning. And interestingly, when I circulated the flyer to some of the Health and Wellbeing Board network, actually somebody from representing the HR professionals in the police force asked whether they could circulate it to staff and colleagues around the police, and I said absolutely, please circulate it to as many people who might be interested to come along. And I think we're simply saying, interestingly, I think mental health was mentioned a lot, and the concerns about people's mental health, and understanding why and how people, I think Chris mentioned, things that you can do yourself to look after your own well-being, but also access to services and how that can happen if you need it is a really important part, and people agreed that it was valuable to have that opportunity. So let's hope, as it's the first of our member events for a while that's outside of an annual public and members meeting, let's see how it goes. But I'm very excited and looking forward to it myself, and thank you to everybody who's put things in place to get that up and running. So any final questions before we conclude this session? Anything else that anyone wanted to? So I think, Wendy, you've just asked, is there capacity for us to invite anyone? Absolutely. So although we've, how I've explained it, it is a member event in the sense that it is designed, as a benefit to members, but actually members of the public might want to come along and they might become members in the future. So it's actually open to anybody and everybody, and your duty as governors and our duty as a trust is not just to our members, but to the public, and the community we serve. So if it's a helpful event for any member at all of our community to attend, then I think that's absolutely fine. I hope the bandwidth can take it though, Fiona. Technically, I was just kind of thinking, what if many people turn up? But
that was my worry.
Yes, me too.
But hey, that would be a nice problem to have, I suppose. But we just need to be prepared if the demand is, if the whole of our police force receive an invitation, for example. I don't quite know what that will mean, but yes, let's just be prepared for any technical issues that might present. But looking forward to it, and I think it will be a really good opportunity to talk about mental health at a time when it is high on everybody's agenda, actually, I think, as much as anything, although it's obviously important all year round. Excellent. Have we got any more questions? Wendy, did you want to say anything else, or no? We've dealt with that. So brilliant. So thank you very much, Angela. I know you and Jean, and I did see Julie on the call earlier, but I can't see everybody. I know you're really stretched, and I think everybody here would say thank you. Not obviously to staff, but I know you do that all the time, and we're grateful for the way in which you show your care for our people. But I think it's really important that as NEDs and governors here, we say thank you to you and the executive team. I think we should all recognise that you're having to put hours in ways that you probably never had to do before, and working across more days than you would normally work. I don't think we can imagine how challenging that must be. So we just want to say thank you for everything you're doing to keep it all going, and show our appreciation. So thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Christian. I'll just say on behalf of the team, we thank you and value that. But what we would all want to say, and I'm going to speak on behalf of everybody here, it's our staff. That's not to say we don't appreciate the thanks for us. Of course we do. But it's our staff that we know are the phenomenal group in here. I can say it about the team because I've got a phenomenal team. I'm absolutely under no doubt about that. But it is our staff at large and our volunteers and everybody playing the role that is getting us to where we are. And that is making me have a level of confidence and energy to cope with the situation, which is obviously important. So a great thanks to all of them. Absolutely.
Thank you. And we would obviously want you to convey our thanks. We get sort of fairly limited opportunities at the moment to say thank you to people, so we obviously would be very grateful if you could pass that on. Jean in particular, as you've got obviously a huge team as Chief Operating Officer that you're responsible for, so if you could pass that on. But it's really everybody, isn't it, that plays their part, and that's the important thing that we need to recognise. So thank you very much, everyone. I haven't got any other business that's been identified to me, so I think that brings us pretty much to the end of our public meeting. We have got a private meeting scheduled of the council to discuss the external auditor appointment process, which is private purely because obviously there's a procurement process involved, rather than because of any secrecy around it. And I think if it's all right with colleagues, there's a separate link, I think, if I'm correct, for that. So could we join that link at 3 o'clock, if that's okay? I think it's for all governors. I'm assuming, do we want Alistair there as or not? Would that be okay? I don't know, Alistair, whether you're planning to stay on.
Yep, absolutely.
Would everybody be comfortable for Alistair to stay? Because obviously he's chair of the audit committee and he's actively involved. Is that all right with you, John?
Yes,
great. Lovely. So let's say thank you very much, everybody, and we'll invite Alistair back to join us at 3 o'clock, and hopefully see all of you, the governor colleagues, there at 3 or 2. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye, everyone. Bye-bye.